I'm back with another Batman the Animated Series episode commentary track with members of the crew that worked on the show. I've previously done Robin's Reckoning Part 1 with Dan Reber, who supervised the editing of that episode, and Feet of Clay Part 2 with director Kevin Altieri and storyboard artist Brad Rader. This time I'm bringing back Kevin to talk about one of his favourite episodes, Showdown. If this is your first time watching one of these videos, you can listen to it as a podcast, but it's better to listen to while you watch the episode yourself. Simply bring up your copy of the episode and press play when I say so. Make sure you stick around after the episode ends to hear more of Kevin's thoughts on the episode, the people that made it, and the magic of traditional handmade animation. Alright, so with all that out of the way, let's get going. Press play in 3, 2, 1, now. Hello everybody, welcome to another Batman the Animated Series commentary track. I'm joined today by the talented Mr. Kevin Altieri. Kevin, hello.
Hi, hello everyone. Glad to be here.
So today we're going through one of your episodes, the
Yes.
episode Showdown.
Yes. Perhaps one of the ones I'm most proud of, just because it's so far off the beaten track from everything else. Inspired
it's a special one.
Yeah. It's like pretty much the first time in my life that I actually got to indulge in my love of the Wild Wild West. You know, one of my favorite shows from the 60s, from when I was a kid.
We'll see from the title card as well that this is a little unusual in that you've also got a writing credit for this episode, haven't you?
Yes, this came about because of a conversation after a recording where Bruce Pauldini and I are sitting on the steps and they go, "Hey, Kevin, what weird character would you want to bring into Batman?" And I went, Enemy Ace, Sergeant Rock. You know, and they're like, we're trying to figure out how that could happen. And then finally I go and they say, Jonah Hex. And we hammered out the plot of this right off the bat. And then, of course, Joe Lansdale wrote the script and came up with like these, this opening sequence right here, by the way, Troy Adamitis. I think this was the first board he actually did for me. Up until then, he was a layout guy and he was working for other crews. But this is his first storyboard. And I just got to say, I got to hand it to the animation studio, Don Yang, I believe. And this show just has such zing, especially in these fights at the beginning.
Yeah, and I just noticed the flickering light from the fireplace on Rachel. Yeah. That was really good.
And here comes, bam!
Yeah, I've often heard you say that Robin's a dirty fighter, and there's the perfect example.
Yeah, he's acrobatic, and he's smaller than most of the people he goes up against. But he has like resources and intelligence. He knows how to win a fight. And watching this, you can actually see kind of the difference. The animation studio really went off of the storyboards because this looks like Troy drew it. You know, it's just his way of drawing. Good old-fashioned cassette tapes. Yeah.
So were you present during the recording of the voice track for this?
Oh, yes. Yeah. And this was just wonderful because just the opening sequence and everything through the Western town is all just well done by Mike Goguen. But yeah, this was the conversation that we had at the recording, and then leading up to this recording, just the casting of the voice actors was genius on the part of Andrea Romano. And it just like the casting of Bill McKinney, who you're going to hear in a second, and the wonderful Elizabeth Montgomery, who we all were just fans of from Bewitched in the 60s and early 70s. Just great. Yeah.
And this
And
version of Jonah Hex that you've got in the show is slightly different to the one that was normally seen in the comics, in that he's a lot older and it's towards the end of his life.
yeah, yes, that was actually there was one comic that was done by Russ Heath
Mm,
where Jonah Hex is much older, and it's like I think it was the death of Jonah Hex. It was like the end of his life,
mm.
and that's kind of where Bruce was going with this character design. Um, it's and I thought that was like brilliant. You know, I can't take credit for him being older, but I certainly went with it because we went and said, okay, suppose it takes place after the Civil War, where technology is advancing, and of course, Ra's al Ghul's technology is advancing
Mm.
even faster than everyone else's. So the time period just worked out, and Bruce and I were just like, yeah, and Jonah Hex is going to be like an old guy at this point, huh? So it's kind of influenced by the Russ Heath version,
Mm.
but this is pure. That's a pure Bruce Timm design. Although
Yeah.
I will say this looks like Mike Goguen drew it for sure.
Yeah, I can't think of many kids' cartoons that would have had a madam as one of the main characters in an episode.
Yeah, I know. It's very clear what her job is.
Yeah.
You know, she's kind of like Kitty in Gunsmoke.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
and I love Elizabeth Montgomery's accent here. Just a slight touch of the Southern belle. Yeah. What? And again, Bill McKinney, just he's not a voice actor, but just his delivery is so good.
Yeah, he's got a really rich quality to his voice.
Yeah.
Very distinctive.
You'll notice that his big eye, his wounded eye,
Mm.
he's not blind in that eye. He looks around.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was a decision that I made or it was a decision that was made overseas at the animation studio. But yeah. And unfortunately, after this, Miss Montgomery passed away.
Yeah, I think this was one of the last things she worked on.
Yeah, I believe it was. And this whole underground sequence is someone who usually didn't work with me, Kurt Gaeta. He's
Mm.
usually on other crews, except on Leather Wings. And I just got to give Kurt total credit for just all of the machinery and just the building of the Phoenix. All this stuff is his. I don't even remember like the machines being designed. And by the way, in the recording, that's me and Bruce doing Foley in the background.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, yeah. We're the guys like making mutter, mutter, grumble, grumble noises in the back. In this one, Andrea actually used us to do a lot of the Foley stuff, like that
Mm.
grunts and stuff. Ah, and Arcady Duvall, design based on Harry Flashman of the
Mm.
Flashman novels by George MacDonald Fraser, which was another thing that Bruce and I decided upon because we were both fans of the novels, and at the recording when the idea first came to us, we were going, yes, and Arcady Duvall is Harry Flashman. You know,
So you had to get Malcolm McDowell involved then.
yep. And then it was just no question. It had to be Malcolm McDowell. And I think this was Malcolm McDowell's first voiceover job.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's had a long career doing that now.
Yeah. Yeah. This shot.
Yeah.
This is Now, BS&P complained about the gunfire, even though it's 6-shooters and stuff. But then we said, yeah, but the guys are armored. Oh, all right. And they let it through.
That by then.
Yeah. Even with the dueling scar. And I gotta hand it
in the episode. Sorry.
Yeah, well, it's hard not to. I mean, just look at again, I was just so pleased with the animation.
Yeah.
And the animation studios tended to go off of the storyboards more than anything. So even though like the character designs may vary a little bit from shot to shot sometimes, I just could not complain, and I didn't want to call retakes just to say it's off model.
Mm.
And this is such a wonderful touch where his hat comes off. And we see just how old Jonah Hex is. And David Warner again.
Yeah. He's great.
Yeah. And I'll say there were things that were cut from the script and coming up when Jonah Hex is put inside of his cell, which is coming up here. He's let in. The cell doors are closed on him. And this guy says, "Sweet dreams, Hex." And Jonah Hex says, "Hope you don't mind me dreaming about your mother." And then the other guys have to restrain the guy from going back in there. And this is a classic Apache Indian trick where you just make a scrape out of the ground and you just disappear. See, and I think that what is me.
Oh, was it?
I think so. And the gasps. Yeah. And I think the gasps are me too.
That transition from the punch and the sound of the doors opening was just perfect.
Yeah. No, I'm really, really happy with this. And I had to apologize to everyone else who worked on the show that as soon as Jonah Hex gets on board the Phoenix, good thing those guys are lousy shots.
Yeah.
But I took over the storyboards from here.
Mm.
Everything in the town, and it's just too much of a dream come true for me. And this is done by not our senator.
Patrick Leahy, was it?
Yeah, Patrick Leahy.
How did he get involved then?
He loved Batman. He was in all the movies. He was almost like Stan Lee doing cameos. So he was like a natural that, Andrea got him. But I couldn't cut any of his speech for time, which became an issue later on. And you saw that little kid jumping up and down.
Mm.
That was just my way of keeping the animation alive.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like, and I, again, it's like it. Sorry, people. It's hard for me to keep up a commentary because I'm like, look at this animation.
Yeah, so
look at this. Yeah. And I like this shot here. It's like, oh my God, I couldn't ask for better.
Yeah.
And just getting to do the gun deck of a ship. And I always wanted to do this. I only got to do it once in my whole career. Yes, good old Joe Denton's inks.
Yeah, and you blew it up. Can't believe it. But
Oh, the outhouse.
yeah, that's so funny.
And look at these guys here. And I just gotta, I don't even know who did the character designs, but it's a combination of Mike Diedrich and Mike Gogan and I believe, Kurt too. And all of this stuff, the reason why you see Denton's inks in that one sign is just I had to pay him homage because the designs of the interior, the exterior, that was all me and Joe Denton coming up and indulging in our love of Victorian era technology and especially Civil War.
Mm. This is another great joke.
Yep, there's a joke. And look at just look at the animation on that Gatling gun. Yeah. And just again, this whole sequence that I did was just it started out literally with me drawing the beginning of the fight and figuring out how this old guy can get out of trouble and actually survive, going from one moment, climbing up and then coming back down.
Mm.
Ah. And this is just kind of the reason I wanted to do the whole episode was just this saber fight versus Bowie knife. And again, I couldn't ask for better animation.
This is wonderful.
And this line coming up,
Yeah.
Malcolm McDowell told me that Oliver Reed used this line on him. Because when they were going to do the Schlag scene in Royal Flash, Oliver Reed comes walking out with his saber and swishes it around just like that. It says, "I was a Heidelberg fencing champion."
Just going to be a broken record again, but this is just so well made.
And again, it's like he gives him the top hat.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I got to design this little glider, I mean,
yeah,
it's just all these, we're just going from moment to moment and figuring out how do they get off the ship, does it land? No, they use the forerunners and the animation here. Again, I have to say it again. This last bit of the fight has so much zing to it.
Yeah.
Whoever the animator was, he should get an award.
I agree.
And I don't know if you noticed, a lot of my shows just end with giant cataclysmic explosions, don't they?
Or at least a threat of one.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't go off.
And this is probably the only time that Jonah Heck's bounty hunter didn't accept cash. He doesn't even pick up the money, he just leaves it in the ground where it was lying. And that was a touch that I had to come up with because it's like I wanted to get his hat back on his head. So miraculously, it just lands near them. Yeah, and again, don't you just love how Ra's al Ghul and Ubu don't even blink? The car comes screaming up and skids like 2 feet away from them.
Yeah, they were expecting it.
No, it's a bit of a character touch.
Yeah.
And again, this last sequence is you can kind of tell from the how the characters go a bit off model, especially Batman. But that's Troy. And I dare say that if I didn't mention it, people probably wouldn't care or would have never noticed.
I thought this was very interesting. This is like the first time that Ra's al
Yeah.
Ghul has had a child other than Talia. And they do more of them
Yeah.
later on, but this was the first time they did it.
Yeah. It makes total sense.
Yeah, of course.
So of course, but it's, and the Lazarus pits are limited, which is something that Paul and Alan Burnett have brought up in the Adventures Continue.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Yeah. Where it's, they kind of embrace this concept. Where there's more than one offspring, or the possibilities or the limitations of the Lazarus pit.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Yeah, indeed. Bravo, indeed. Who'd think that one of the best episodes of Batman doesn't really have Batman in it very much?
Well, yeah. Yes, I agree. I'm going to say, I do believe this is one of the better episodes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That just flew by.
Yeah.
Really well paced. There wasn't a wasted moment in there at all.
No, but there was quite a lot that was cut out.
Really?
Sadly, yeah, because originally this episode was supposed to be for the afternoon slot, which is a minute longer, I believe. And instead, for Batman and Robin, it's strictly Saturday morning. So it was this became like a minute shorter. And it was just painful sitting there with Joe Gall, just deciding what we're cutting, because we tried to trim as much as we could. And because you got to, on this one, especially with the animation, you wanted to let the scenes breathe and play out. Like there were shots in the town, more reactions from the denizens of that western town reacting, more people, and Bruce designed this wonderful hick on a pickle barrel who's just sitting there chomping on a pickle, and then he spits out the pickle. It's like they're just really great shots that we just had to cut out. It was just really sad.
Yeah. From the storyboards you showed me, I recall there being a scene where Ra's al Ghul orders Arcady Duval to go and investigate what all the shooting's about.
Yes.
He like pushes a guard and takes his saber.
Yeah. That animation, I actually have it on VHS from the work print. Yeah, I found a work print that has that shot in it. So the work print was made before that last shot had to be cut.
Okay.
And it's like we're only talking like maybe 10, 15 seconds, but something had to go. And I always found it better to, instead of speeding things up and chopping the hell out of it, one moment that can be removed entirely was actually a better choice. And unfortunately, that was one of them.
Yeah.
I was really sad.
Well, as a viewer, I think the episode is still really great, even with those things cut out of it. One of my favorites.
No, thank you. No, I mean, this one I was really happy. And you'll notice like how much, I mean, I took most of the third act. Well, yeah, except for the very ending. And while you're a director on a show, it's pretty difficult to do that much boarding. But there's no way I could let this one go by. I had to do it. And I had Glenn was storyboard revisionist at that time, Glenn Murakami. And him and Joe Denton just inked that third act. So it just came out. It was just one of my favorite storyboards that I've ever done, I think, in my
Oh
opinion.
yeah, yeah. I shared them with on my channel, and a lot of people commented just how wonderfully detailed they were. One person was going on that, this could be published as a comic book and it would be perfect as it is. And yeah, it could. It could.
Then I'd have to find the that one sequence, the end sequence.
Yeah.
I'd have to find that. God knows where that disappeared to. It's somewhere in my flat file somewhere. One day I hope to find it, and then I'll let you have that too.
Oh, great. Thanks. I look forward to it. Send over anything you've got. I'd be excited even to see like I don't know, a model for Jonah Hex's hat.
Yeah, those exist. They
Yeah.
ended up reusing those in other series. Because I think I think Dan Reba grabbed a whole model pack that Joe Denton did. Um, I don't know I think Joe was a background guy. I don't think props was what he was supposed to do. But when it comes to the Wild Wild West, there's nobody better than Joe Denton for, you know, when I said I wanted a Colt Dragoon, I got a black powder Colt Dragoon, and that's that. And you'll also notice like the realism of how the guns are used. You know, like it's not like everyone has like 6 shooters that have like 15 shots in them. You know,
Hmm.
none of that happens. You see like the Gatling gun, the guy cranking it, and it's ejecting shells. You know, so everything's as realistic as it can be. It's like the guy who gets punched, he's sponging out
Yeah.
or ramming down the cannon. So the cannons are all, you know, from that period, and it's like you lift up the cannon, lift up the powder, put the cannonball in, sponge it out, put the cannonball in, and put in the powder. It's like all that stuff was there.
Yeah. Am I right in understanding that Joe Denton was a Civil War reenactment
Oh
enthusiast?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yes,
So he was
yeah.
the
No.
guy. If you wanted to
Oh,
accuracy, you'd go to him.
oh, yeah. No, there's no question. It's like he had become like I'd be Joe would come up to me like after a weekend and he'd say, "Yep, went to Arizona with the missus this weekend." And he pulls out a picture and there's like Joe totally dressed up, as the town sheriff or whatever. Six shooters, everything. And I also believe he was a Civil War reenactor too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just something that he did on he owned those guns, you know, and just the joy of designing an airship. We were just sitting there. Okay, what's it going to look like? What would it look like? Using the technology. Well, I think the United States was still using monitors as ships at that time in history. I think there were still monitors after the Civil War, but we did a airborne blend of the CSS Virginia with the USS Monitor. Both, all the, it's like Jonah Hex observing the American Civil War, took the best technologies from both sides, and came up with this. And
Yeah.
just the idea of Ra's al Ghul. This is the kind of thing that he would have done,
Yeah.
because he could have. It would have been a paradise, or part of his plan would be to preserve the wilderness. I don't think he'd be enslaving the native population. I think he'd be using them or enabling them to fight off the American government. And
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny actually. I one of the things I noticed from the episode is that Ra's al Ghul seems more concerned about people's well-being than he is in later episodes. Because he gets upset about his one of his workmen getting whipped, and he
yeah,
warns the townspeople to leave if they value their lives. Later on, he'd be like, "Oh yeah, I'm just going to blow up 4 billion people. It'll be fine."
yeah. No, but that is how his plans work. Like this is the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. And environments haven't been laid waste to yet.
Mm.
So his plans and using his superior technology, yeah, he could have perhaps held the U.S. government to ransom. You know, it just seemed illogical. You know, as the ages and technologies change, Ra's al Ghul changes with it to
Mm.
the point where we have the episode, "The Demon's Quest," that he at this point, the Earth has been taking so much punishment that he's just, yep, got to get rid of like 2 billion people.
Yeah.
Too many people on the planet, and that's all there is to it.
Mm.
Rainforests and everything. You know, he. I think the world just got into worse shape after the Industrial Revolution. And then there's
Yeah.
stories that I want to do in between that. Of course, this is an alternate reality. This is a different world, you know. It's like, because if you look at Batman the Animated Series, it's you know, it was contemporary with the 90s to a certain extent,
Mm-hmm.
but where it's still a world with propeller driven aircraft and no, you know, no cell phones or anything like that. Computers are these giant things still, you know. It's
Yeah.
just a different world, you know, with cooler looking cars and stuff.
Yeah.
But so that the technology in that world, so I would call it, everyone says, yeah, it's the DC universe, but all the DC universe I don't really agree with.
Mm.
Um, so I would like to think that there's stories with Ra's al Ghul in World War One and stories of Ra's al Ghul in World War Two.
Mm.
And of course, Alfred Pennyworth was a fighter pilot in World War Two, you know, and there's a whole story. But again, it would be the DC universe that leads up to Batman the Animated Series reality,
Mm-hmm.
not our reality.
You mean it's not a documentary?
No. Heavens no.
Yeah, thank goodness. I'll tell you something funny though. Watching those cartoons as a kid, it made me feel like I had to be aware not to go to factories in the middle of the night and meet with gangsters. Thankfully, that eventuality has never come up.
Yeah, no, that's just never a good idea. You don't know who's occupied the place.
That's right.
But yeah, so yeah, I would like to. I would love to do a sequel to this,
Mm.
but not with Jonah Hex, but just with. It just seems like there's a whole series of just Ra's al Ghul
Yeah.
cartoons that haven't been done. I don't really like what, you know, after the character designs, after the design changes on Batman. This was one of the last shows before I was doing Gen 13
Mm.
for Wildstorm. Um, but there is I just think that Ra's al Ghul wasn't employed properly, in my opinion.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah, I do like the Batman Beyond episode he was in. It was just quite twisted.
yeah,
Um,
but it's like again, Batman Beyond. It's not a bad show. You
no,
know, I'm not
it
gonna.
is a very good show.
It's a very good show. It's a good show. It's entertaining. I disagree with that future.
Hmm.
You know, I think I would have done something. I would have done something a little bit different. But again, it wasn't up to me. I wasn't involved.
Yeah.
Although, if you go in the IMDb, sometimes they give me total credit as the creator of Batman Beyond, and I'm not. I was not. I'm not. It's like I really had nothing to do with that.
Yeah, I mean, not to dwell too much on Batman Beyond, but I think one of the things that it's not necessarily a shortcoming, but kind of towards the end that's when they started doing computer animation without the cells.
Yeah.
And you can really tell because the art is much cleaner, it's much smoother, but it loses some charm and some character. Like even
Yeah.
just watching Showdown just then, you could see like little bits of dust and
Oh,
dirt on the cells. There was one bit where there was looked like a fingerprint on Jonah Hex's eye, and
Yeah,
it just
and
adds a
that's
layer of I don't know the word to describe it, but it's just special.
people have asked me. It's like, oh, well, why do 2D animation? And it's 2D animation. Even if you're working inside of a computer, which I've done since this, even if it's digital, like if people want to look at Rat Bastard, I think it's on YouTube. Um, that's purely CGI, but the entire process is drawing. Um, it doesn't have any cells involved, but it's still 2D, and there is still something that's wonderful about 2D animation. It's living drawings. Computers are not making the decisions, you know.
Mm.
And there are shortcuts, things that happen with the computer, which things that I use myself. But there's just times when when companies use the computers where it just loses all the charm.
Yeah.
Good example is something that comes from 2D, like The Incredibles.
Mm-hmm.
Not comparing myself to Brad Bird, but Brad Bird is someone whose background is founded in 2D animation, and just the guy can draw, And movies like The Incredibles start out with drawing and then finish with the entire CG, but it is designed by people drawing on paper.
Mm-hmm.
After that's done, that gets mined for bits and touches, which Disney would do, which different studios would do. It's not unheard of, but there becomes a bland sameness even to very well done feature animation.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'm really tired of seeing Dash's expressions on almost everybody. They just that's how younger characters are going to react now.
Yeah.
Oh, there's Dash's face again. There's Dash's face. There's his body. It's like it just keeps getting reused and reused. Whereas when Dash first shows up, totally original character, wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the storyboards for that, you can see it applies to this show too. If people look at the storyboards and then look at the final animation, that there's just animation is just as an art form, just drawings coming to life. There is just a joy to that comes through. Like, there's so much of my emotion and my feelings in that third act.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much of Troy in that first act, that first fight. The way that Batman fights, the way that Robin fights, that's, Troy's living it every time he's drawing that stuff. And just the emotions and stuff of the townspeople, that's it's like how the machinery moves in the underground cavern. Kurt came up with that. He drew it. The pumping, it's like, I don't know what those things are doing. They're pumping air into something. I don't know. Are they, but it just looks so cool.
Yeah.
It's just things like that the artist brings to it. The Batmobile on leather wings, which is just a drawing with figuring out 2D animation flourishes to make it look cool. What looks cool coming out of your pencil and pen always looks better than CG figuring out something.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a different approach, and there's just a level of joy to it that you don't get with CG. Not to say that CG is bad. and again, I'm really happy that HBO Max is putting these on again. It just I think it actually raises the bar for everyone else.
Yeah.
spoiling the audience out there with really good animation. Let's keep doing it, please.
Yeah, yeah, and in the UK, BTAS is on Netflix and Amazon Prime, so that's kind of unusual to be available on two
Oh,
platforms.
really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And they're getting and for the first time, the audience is, well, unless you had the Blu-ray, you're getting to see them with retakes in it.
Ah.
Because a lot of my shows got put on the air, just because of schedule and time,
Hmm.
without the final retakes. And happy to say that I see most of the retakes are in. Like in this episode, there are a few moments that didn't make it to the air, but actually there they are now.
Oh, that's
So
good.
yeah, no, it's wonderful.
I get to see the best version of the best show.
Yes, and and this one had well, again, I just have to say, one of the great joys I've had is like getting to meet all of these people that I thought so much of.
Mm.
I never thought I'd be able to meet Bill McKinney. You know, he was always such a great heavy in like westerns, and it was really great that in this one he's playing a hero, but it's a
Yeah.
hero with the same personality that he brought to all of his villains. Like an outlaw Josie Wales and the Shootist. So yeah, and we had the conversation, me and Bill McKinney, and he said, "Boy, this is a lot of fun. It's like it's a good story, it's a good script." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, and I told him, "It's like, wouldn't it? It'd be great to do a Jonah Hex series, wouldn't it?" And he said, "Yeah, tell him you're the director, convince him."
Well, I'd watch
But
it.
me too. Well, I'd like to do it, but yeah. They have done Jonah Hex, but the live action, I don't think they quite got him.
Yeah. Yeah. Perhaps the less said
Again,
about that, the better.
yeah, just I dare say they went a little bit too steampunk, I
Yeah.
believe. But yeah, it was pretty much not watchable.
Jonah Hex turned up in Justice League in one episode. Were you involved in that at all?
Not that one. No.
Ah.
I did some Justice League storyboards for Dan Reba,
Mm.
one of which was set in the Wild West, but I remember drawing a tiger tank. Batman is dressed up kind of like Jonah Hex,
Mm.
and 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 it had dinosaurs, velociraptors.
I think Jonah Hex was in that episode.
Yeah, but I didn't draw.
Oh, but you
But
didn't
I
draw
didn't
him.
draw.
Ah.
No, Dan gave me all of the fight at the end, and I'm like, which is a terrible thing to do to a freelancer, by the way.
Damn it,
it's
Dan.
yeah, it's a lot of work. It's like, there's literally like you know I can't remember, it was like Batlash or whoever,
Mm.
El Diablo. I don't I don't remember. It's like it just seems like, they have a fight. It's like there's a sentence, they have a fight. One woman overcomes Diablo, something like that. And I'm like, oh great. That's like 10 pages later, storyboard pages later. I'm like, well, I guess I'm actually paying Warner Brothers now to do the storyboard for them. But yeah, but I mean, it's the kind of Dan gave me that stuff because he knew it's the kind of stuff that I really want to draw. So
Yeah.
I can't complain. But anyway,
Yeah.
I
All right. So, any final thoughts on Showdown?
think I've opened my yap enough. I can, it's again, all I can say is just the opportunity to indulge in things that I really wanted to do.
Mm.
You know, both Bruce and I at the recording just we're like, and we can do Harry Flashman in animation, you know.
Yeah.
And truthfully, it's like, you know, Arcady Duvall is a bit more evil than Flashman, but Flashman is that scoundrel, you know. He's out for himself, and he's out to make his own life as comfortable as possible, and he tries to avoid trouble at any cost. And by trying to avoid that trouble, he ends up getting jammed right at the spear point of trouble, you know, which is a lesson for us all.
Yeah, Duvall's kind of like Flashman if he wasn't at all cheeky, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And again, Malcolm McDowell. The only thing that is missing is if perhaps like we could have gotten Oliver Reed into the cast somehow.
That might have been
would have had to. Yeah, it would have had to. David Warner, Oliver Reed, and Malcolm McDowell in the studio together. I guess you'd have to bring a bottle of whiskey.
At least one.
Yeah, or a water cooler. A water cooler full of whiskey for these guys. No, but it was just a really great pleasure. And then just to hear like Malcolm McDowell talk about in person. I got to ask him and talk to him about doing Royal Flash. What was it like working with Richard Lester? All that, you know. And it was just wonderful. It was great. Just like Oliver Reed comes out because they're doing the sequence with the Schlag sword fight in there where, you know, they're going to give him a matching scar so that he can be an imposter for the prince regent or the prince who's going to become ruler. And, you know, the prisoner of Zenda plot. And I could just see, and he said, yeah, Oliver Reed comes out, you know, dressed as, you know, just dressed as Bismarck and, you know, with the mustache, and he has the sword, and it's like, I was a Heidelberg fencing champion. You know? And I don't even remember what Malcolm McDowell said. He said in answer to that. But anyway, it's just funny that line is actually that was invented by Joe Lansdale, you know. So
yeah.
Anyway,
so it's immortal now.
Yeah. Well, I just hope people just keep enjoying this one. You know, it pleases me that I got to just get something like this onto Saturday morning animation. It's kind of unbelievable, you know, and just the level of the animation, just like really, the animation studio just didn't balk at it at all, you know. They just like embraced it and went with it, you know, and obviously animators seem to enjoy themselves.
Yeah.
It's like I just you know, seeing it again, watching this, it's like just the small moments where, you fool, you want to blow us all to atoms, you know. Just look at the animation on that guy. It's like there's so much personality and zing to it, you know. And so many of the episodes, even on Batman, so many of the episodes don't have that, you know.
Yeah.
I think this struck me as being the same team that did Harley's Holiday. I certainly recognize, especially like you take the scene that I actually drew, so I was really paying close attention to it, of Harley and Veronica Vreeland in Bruce's stolen car at the very end when they're driving on the bridge. It's just the two girls talking in the car. And they put as much animation into that as the most action-packed sequence I've ever seen. And it really pays off. It's like, it's just like wonderful, like the reaction and the acting between the two characters. And I see a lot of that level of animation in this episode too. So They actually put like some of their better animators just on the sequences where characters just need like that little animated personality bit. There's so much of that in this one, and there's so much of that in Harley's Holiday. I think it's the exact same crew, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, I think by this point they kind of got what was expected of them for Batman. And I
Yeah,
think
not every animation studio did.
no, no, but perhaps it was Dong Yang you said, wasn't it?
I believe this one was Dong Yang. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure that because they had some earlier episodes that were a little
Yeah.
bit wobbly. But these later ones are pretty good.
Yeah, it's because Don Yang wasn't just an animation studio. They sent the work to different studios.
Okay.
So Sunmin Animation did a lot of Don Yang's work. Um, believe it or not, TMS would get
Hmm.
some things from Don Yang, and I think was it Studio Junio is another one. But I'm not sure if it's Don Yang. It could be any number of studios in Korea.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, but this one's got. I just recognize just animators that I'll never know who they were, unless they come forward and tell me. But again, I could recognize the certain styles and that an animator would bring to it. And actually, some of this, I believe, some of the animators on this one were also the same people who worked for TMS on Feet of Clay Part 2.
Okay.
I can see similarities. There's just certain little things that the characters do. There's just that little extra oomph. And and I again, I'll say it again. I didn't call retakes because they went off style. I just enjoyed looking at the animation so much that I just decided to leave it as it is. Yes, Arcady Duvall doesn't look quite like Arcady Duvall, but look at that snarling, that look he's got. It's like I can't, I'm not going to endanger losing that. Have an animator redraw the thing to put it back, put it on model, painfully on model. No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is big problem with a lot of the animation that's done today is how stiff it all looks. And I think it's because of that. If it's good, don't mess with it. Be happy with what you got.
Those
Because the
sound
more,
like lessons for life.
well, it is kind of lessons for animation anyway. Just my opinion. But also, you don't, it's like so many studios just beat the animation studios to death over things like that.
Mm.
When you want them to be, when they do a good job, recognize a good job and reward that. Don't punish them for daring to be employed by you. Right, Luke?
Right, 100%. I agree.